Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, we never really want to talk about it, but life and death are so synonymous with one another that it's part of the human experience and one that we need to, well, I guess maybe come to grips with, or at least talk about a bit more than we do now. But if you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you are in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I'm the host of this podcast, where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals. We pick their brain about current projects, state of the industry, how they got started, and so very much more in a light and in a conversational fashion. You know, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that you do, because quite frankly, you're listening right now. Subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, gives you a 5-star rating on your podcast provider of choice. We're pretty much everywhere. Places like Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google, and plus we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel, so if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we would absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, we're on the Twitter, we're on the Instagram, we're on the TikTok, and we're on the Letterboxd for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for all the latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because, you know, if we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So please, pay us a visit. On this episode, we got a special one. Real special. We would have been up earlier, but like we said on the previous episode, we've been having some technical difficulties, but we are back up and running at the tail end of the Hot Docs Canadian International Documentary Film Festival, which is one of our favorites here in the city of Toronto, with a myriad of fabulous choices in the documentary form for people to check out, and one that we thoroughly enjoyed, and it's having one last screening today, but also is available online to screen. It's called Jackie the Wolf. And it's the story of, well, not the entire story, but it's the story of an author and end-of-life activist named Jackie Jencquel, who thinks that aging is an incurable illness. And she causes a lot of shock and debate when she announces that she wants to die. She's not sick or anything, but she just decides she wants to die. And she does not want to, she refuses to live beyond a certain age. And she even announces her death date in the hopes that this decision will prompt changes in French law and gives others the choice to die as well, based on a personal decision rather than a diagnosis. It's obviously an unconventional position, but it's a really interesting conversation that goes beyond the sensational moments that you would suspect, as we get really deep into the issues of why someone would want to die, and rather than the when. And this film, which was made by director Tuki Jencquel, who just happens to be her son, is really fascinating, because this goes to so many different issues about individual liberty, desire, personal autonomy, vanity, you know, and I mean, and everything else in between. It's one of those things where it's really a interesting experience, because it takes up the entirety of the human condition. And I mean, it's ultimately this really exceptionally beautiful film that I cannot recommend highly enough. But we had the unique pleasure of sitting down and talking with Tuki about the process of making the film, and so very much more. But if you get the chance, if you're in Toronto, there is a screening of Jackie the Wolf today, I do believe. Let me double check that to be sure. Yeah, it is today, in just a few hours. Go check it out if you can, but also it will be available streaming online until, I believe, May 9th. So you should check it out that way too. But first, enjoy our talk with Tuki, because between you and me, it's a darn good one. But I mean, just to kick this off officially, I mean, obviously, thank you so much for the time today. I mean, I do genuinely appreciate it. I mean, my God, congratulations on the film. It is such a beautiful piece of work. I absolutely loved it. I mean, I guess my first question is, because obviously this is a very personal story for you, and I mean, you've been I'm sure you've been living with this with most of your life to varying degrees, but like walk me through the decision to sort of turn the camera on and start documenting the story.
So I've been filming my mom for almost ever since I have a camera,
Yeah.
you know, and already I did a small portrait of her 25 years ago, and then I've always had like different cameras, and I've always filmed her, but never like, it was never an idea like, oh, I'm filming her for a movie. It's more like I'm filming her for myself. If one day she's not there and I want to hear her voice or see her, then and the same way I film my daughter, or, you know, it's like memories, you know, you try to film your memories or your moments, and then whatever you do with it later. And then at some point it sort of morphed into, okay, is this more like, am I filming this for my own memories or for my own, or am I doing this, are we going to make a film, you know? And it was sort of a dialogue. It wasn't I think even my mom at one point said, oh, you're making a film about me. You know, it's like not, I even have that film, that moment, it's on camera, where she's like telling my daughter, oh, your dad's making a film about me, so I can tell my story. And then it was sort of, okay, she had a very interesting life, so it was, okay, I want to tell her life story. But then it turned into something completely different. And then she when she started talking about her own suicide plans, or like the assisted suicide plan, and she started becoming some sort of, I mean, not celebrity, but you know, she started getting a lot of media attention in France and in other French-speaking countries. And then she started being approached by a lot of people, and she started having a little bit this celebrity attitude, you know, like, okay, well, I have all these people who are, you know, want to make a film, you know, or a theater play or whatever, right? And I was like, she was sort of flirting with other filmmakers, and I think to put pressure on me. So it's like, and I think that was the moment that I consciously decided, okay, this is no longer just filming memories, it's actually going to be a film.
Because I mean, it's so interesting to see her go along this journey, because I mean, like you say, there are moments where she's almost strident about it, and like sort of puffing her chest out and being very sort of, look at me, this is what I'm doing. But I mean, then conversely, we see these moments where she is obviously very depressed, and I mean, obviously going through stuff. I'm kind of curious, how did you as the filmmaker manage to sort of keep that line of objectivity? Because I can imagine on one end you're like enjoying her walking around strutting like a peacock, but on the other end it's like, oh my god, my mother's actually really depressed, what do I do?
That's true. I mean, I did see her, I did see she could be extremely joyful, and then also be very, especially towards the end, like the last couple of years, she was going through, she just wasn't enjoying life, and it was hard. I mean, as a son, you want your parents to be healthy and happy and energetic forever.
Yeah, of course.
And then to see like sort of her not being able to cope with old age, and feel like there was also no more purpose in her life. And I mean, I tried whatever one can try. I mean, I would try to see her as much as I could. Also, making the film was a way of finding purpose, not just for me, but also for her. It was like a common project that gave us some sort of something to do together. It wasn't just like, oh, I'm coming to see you, we're going to hang out. No, we're actually doing something together that's going to be there when you're not there anymore. And also, at one point, I tried to get her help from... She was someone who very auto-medicated herself very much, but I have a friend who's a psychiatrist in France, and he recommended someone like a psychologist, so I asked her to go see a therapist, but then she turned the things around. Like she was very skillful at that. At one point, I told her, listen, let's try microdosing, and I got these mushrooms from Holland, these microdoses, and then she was like, I'll do it, but I want to see first what it does on you. So I had to. So we tried many things, but nothing was very like long-lasting, unfortunately. I mean, even like antidepressant medication. Then she didn't. I mean, that scene is in the film.
Yeah.
She was like, "This is like, I don't like what it does to me," and
I've been on mood stabilizers myself, and I mean, I can agree with that. I didn't like what it did to me either, but the idea of the date, and I mean, even in discussions with her, like even mentioning in her 20s how this was something that was on her mind, was this something that was always kind of looming overhead, or was this a revelation for you sort of in the moment?
No, I knew this already when we had the conversation. That was why I was pushing her. I wanted her to tell the story because I knew it for a long time. I knew like that she was always thinking about it at a young age. I mean, at some point she must have told me. I don't know when, but that she and then also I knew also a story about her grandmother who died of breast cancer in Russia, 1920s, and she was a doctor herself, and she was in so much pain. There was no pain medication either at the time, so she asked her husband, who was, to if he could kill her, because like she couldn't bear the pain anymore. And this whole time they were like all living in one room, my grandmother and her parents. So this is my mom's mother, who was a young girl, 8 years old, seeing her mom suffer for weeks, and the tumor was growing, and it was just the pain was getting more intense, and then her husband tried to suffocate her to release her, but then he couldn't do it. Like he said, "I'm sorry, I can't do this," and so she died a very, very painful, agonizing death that took many days of her, and my grandmother witnessed this. And it, of course, if you're 8 years old and you see your mom die like this, it's something that she would tell again and again.
Yeah.
And my mother grew up with this story. So for her, this idea that in the modern day and age where even dogs are not allowed, no one who loves his dog lets him suffer for.
Right.
She was like, why would we do something to humans
Yeah.
that we don't even do to our own pets? So that became part of her very strong conviction. I knew this story too, and I knew that, but that's not in the film. I'm telling you, this is backstory.
For sure, yeah. Did the shifting of the date, contribute to just sort of her mood and sort of state of being? Because I mean, even in the film when it mentions like she was going to do it, but then she backed off, and then but getting all these texts saying goodbye, I could imagine that definitely sort of compounds the issue even more. Like sort of sitting back on it now, do you think the idea of a date sort of compounded her condition, if that's the right way to put it?
Yeah, I mean the idea of the whole thing with the date put a lot of pressure on her.
Yeah.
Unnecessary pressure.
Yeah.
And I always thought the idea of the date was a very stupid thing to do.
Yeah.
And she herself regretted it too at the end, that she even set a date. I mean, she realized that I guess when she did set a date, she was in a different state of mind, and it was sort of like a provocation.
It was the celebrity stage.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was sort of like, and then she got so much reaction from it that she thought this is the right thing. And this is like, it confirmed her, like that she was doing something for the cause. She was sort of like, but I think I mean, yeah, the whole thing with the date was, unfortunately, it was totally unnecessary, and she regretted it herself.
And I mean, there was something that comes out in the film, which I definitely like, especially from your end of the spectrum on this. Because, I mean, obviously, as her son, you love her, you want to respect her wishes, but especially at the beginning, there was definitely more pushback on you trying to talk her out of it and sort of pushing and like, Mom, this is stupid. We're like, we don't have to do this. It definitely felt towards the end she was more accepting of your feelings on the situation. I mean, I'm kind of curious, how did you manage sort of the ups and downs of all this, especially as you're trying to sort of consciously put a story together and make a film?
I mean, while I was filming it, I didn't really know how this was something I was relegating to the edit. Like,
Right.
How is this even going to tell this story?
Yeah.
Like, it was more in the moment. And of course, I know because of time that there's a certain arc
Yeah.
in everyone's life,
Yeah.
in her life, in my life too. and the way we deal with this. She'd been talking about this without setting a date, but she'd been talking about this for many years before. So for me, it wasn't something new or shocking to talk with her about her plans. So she was the vice president of the Right to Die Society in France. So she was for many years I knew that this is something she strongly believed in, and that she herself wanted to have like what she would call a dignified death, or like a painless death,
Right.
or whatever.
Right.
But when I did start the film, because she was going through this sort of celebrity stat, it was very hard to argue with her, because she felt like she was in. It almost felt like there were no doubts in her decision. It was so clear, and if you argued with her, she just brushed you aside, like in those scenes.
Right.
She was just like, if you don't understand, like if you don't know how to deal with it, then. But then with time, I realized that something changed in her too, and she realized that no, it's not so easy to. Like when she made that decision, it still felt so far away for her that it was easy to talk about it in a way like, oh, this is like, death is not a tragedy. Just accept it. We're all gonna die. Yes, of course. But then with when she started pushing the date, and she started seeing what it meant also for the other people, it became easier to talk with her, because she herself had doubts, and she wasn't so, like, even there's this one scene where I tell her, so it was a mistake to set a date, and she said yes, it wasn't, like she accepted it herself. And this is something I have to say about my mom. She was someone who could be very opinionated, have very strong convictions about ideas, but she never had certainties. Like she could be completely convinced about something, but if you argued with her, or like she could also understand the other side, or understand why maybe what she was thinking could be wrong or not.
It really felt like this film, I mean, at least for me personally, gave me, I guess, maybe a respect for the process of dying, if that makes any kind of sense. And I mean, as you were putting this together, like, what was your pull away as you really started to find the narrative and find the story? Because I mean, it wasn't necessarily that, death is bad, because, death is life. Death happens. Death is going to be part of the story for all of us. But it felt like in you sharing the story, I got a greater understanding of the need to respect it, especially when you're closer to it, I guess maybe is probably the right way to think of it. Like when you were putting the narrative together, like is that something you found?
I'm not sure I understand.
Well, in terms of, especially in the edit, because like you say, you shot everything, you were putting it all together. You weren't necessarily sure where the story was going to go or what it was going to say. In the edit, is that something that you found, just sort of that respect for death?
I did find, I don't know if I found respect for death. I did try to be very, even though I'm her son, I tried not to be like in a sort of moral high ground,
Right.
Not look down. Okay, I'm going to judge you in this way or that way, or I'm going to be the one making I can tell you how I feel, but this is at one point I tell her, I should be telling you don't do it, but it's your choice in the end. I do respect that, and I think that was my journey to learn to accept it and understand her, even though maybe I'm not happy about her not doing it and dying. I would prefer her to be here, but I also understood that, well, I learned to accept that the life she had, she didn't want to have that life anymore. It was like, and that nothing really was going to change that. Not all the love that I could give her, or my brothers, or her grandchildren, that was not for her enough to continue. But also, one thing I realized, and I realize now more and more, is that as I was filming, of course, when you're filming and you turn on the camera, and then it's like, okay, now we're filming, and then it becomes something very almost intellectual, like, okay, why you want to do this, or why do you not, or what, it's sort more of like a cognitive process, but where you maybe put your emotions, you're trying to control them, or it's not so. But then, so during the filming, it's that, and now, like a year later, and I look back and I say, I understand her, I respect her, I still wish she hadn't done it.
Oh yeah, of course.
You know?
No, I mean, I'm curious. Did you start putting together the film while she was still with us, or was that something you had to? Oh, okay. Because I mean, I can imagine, given her proud nature, I can imagine there would be things where it's like, no, don't put that in the movie. Were you able to sort of keep her away from the edit?
Yes, I did start editing when and then she was still there, and I edited in Paris, so I stayed with her, and it was kind of funny because I would be the whole day in the edit. I would see her the whole day, and then I'd come home in the evening and I was staying with her.
Yeah.
And then jokingly I would see her and I said, Mom, I've been seeing you and hearing you all day. I don't want to see you now. And then she was like, I don't want to see you either. And then we had a first, like, very, very rough first 30 minutes of the film.
Yeah.
And I showed it to her. And she had absolutely no conditions or nothing where she said, oh, don't do this, or don't and even I told her, I'm not doing a film to convince people that this is the right thing. This is not an activist film. And she's like, no, that's better. I want this to be about like a real, discussion or something. I don't want to do something like propaganda or something. And so she understood that I was not doing something to convince people that heard this, And then the only thing she asked me not to do is put it, because I have beautiful footage that my grandfather did when she was young, and she had such bad memories of her childhood, that she just said, please don't use any of that. Which I was planning to use at one point, that archive footage and telling her backstory, and she just, oh please, I don't, that's not me. Don't use that. She had so I respected that choice, that of course.
No, I mean, I'm curious. I mean, obviously you're on the brink of a world premiere of the film. Would she be happy? Would she be mortified? I mean, where would her mind state be right now if she was still with us and the film was coming out?
I mean, there's no way of me. I mean, I think she would be very happy that I finished the film.
Yeah.
In a way, for me finishing the film, because we started doing this together, and then I had to finish it without her.
Yeah.
But she was very much still a part of the process for me. She was still very present for me while I was doing it. So it's almost like a promise. Like, I told you I was going to do this. I have to finish it now also and do it the way we said we were going to do a film. So I think she would be very happy to know that I finished the film. Would she be happy with the film the way it is? I mean, I cannot know, but I knowing her, and I think she would. I think she would like it. But of course, I can never know, and I would love. It would have been beautiful to show her the film, but this is of course not possible. I did think about what you're asking me. I thought about it a lot in the plane coming here, and I was like, and in a way that's something that gives me strength. I feel like she would tell us, just enjoy the film. She wouldn't be like, oh, don't cry. Just enjoy it.
I like that. Yeah. No, because I mean, obviously, this is a very difficult subject, and I mean, even people like me talking to you want to be very respectful of it. But at the same time, it's definitely an interesting conversation to have. And I mean, I'm kind of curious because obviously this is a personal story. It's one that's going to stay with you. But I mean, is there anything in this entire process that kind of illuminated to your, like, that you learned about yourself as a filmmaker?
Yes. I think what I learned is I had an incredible amount of energy doing this film, even though it's very personal. Not even because it's so personal.
Yeah.
It gave me an extra amount of energy and doing this and taking the time, and it was almost like a luxury. Like you say, okay, you're doing something that you're so invested in, it's so important. It became much more than a film for me doing this. It became therapy. It became a promise. It became so much more. that it's almost, and of course there's moments where it's very painful, but I feel like now if I'm thinking, okay, I don't know what my next project is going to be, and of course I don't want it to be about something tragic, but I feel like it has to mean a lot to me for me to find the same sort of passion. It has to be something that's very, very close and very important to me to actually think that it's important enough, or that I have the authority to share this with other people, and the legitimacy.
Well,
so I think that's what a little bit what was and also the other thing is that that things are so much different from the way you maybe think about something in one moment, or how they then what you feel or think in hindsight.
And that's why this film works, because had you been this sort of outside observer, this would have been a completely different film. But that passion, and I think that caring comes through, and that's something that gets lost a lot of times, particularly with documentary filmmaking too, because you want to be objective, you want to observe the subject, but you're interacting with the subject. It's your mother. How can you not interact with her? And I think that's where audiences are really going to buy into it and really sort of embrace it, because this is such a personal journey. And just to really put a bow on this, I'm kind of curious, because especially in this business, nobody gets into it not being a fan first. And it's a dumb question, but I like to ask, is there a film, particularly a documentary, that had sort of a light bulb moment go off for you and made you think, hey, I could do something like that?
Well, there's many that I'm not necessarily I could do something like that, but maybe that I see and I said, I wish I would do something like that, or I had done that. And I have to say now that I'm here in Toronto, and I said it already before, also talking to Andrea, it's like, for definitely Sarah Polley's film Stories We Tell.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, when I saw that, and I saw it's also so personal and so beautifully done, so intelligent, so much emotion, but at the same time also not an easy subject, a story to, it's not an easy film to make, and I saw that it was done with so much grace and good taste and insightful, that I said, wow, if whenever I had doubts, is it okay to make a film about it? That would be one film for me that I could go back to and say it's okay. And also, although it's not, it's not such a controversial, in her case, maybe not so controversial, but just so personal, and it gave me a lot of encouragement. I would say also the films by Ross McElwee,
For sure.
Sherman's March, also making something so personal.
Oh my God, yeah.
So those are definitely very big inspirations and for me making this film.
Well, I'm so glad you're having your premiere here, because at least from an artistic standpoint, if we could put Sarah as Prime Minister, I think we would, just because we're so proud of her. And after you mentioning that, that was a light bulb for me, because your film really definitely hits in that canon. And I think audiences here are really going to embrace it in the same spirit, because it is such a beautiful piece of work, and it's honest too, and that's something that gets lost a lot of times, especially in these days of fake news and sort of telling stories. This is not an issue movie, this is a family story, and that's why it's beautiful. And just my friend, you've done a beautiful piece of work. Just thank you so much for the time today.
Thank you. Thank you, David.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.